Yeah, I know. I know. I'm running a little behind. I know. It's fine. We're good. Hell of a day, right? I hope you're doing well. I hope everything's good. That you're staying out of trouble. That you've been creative today. That you've done things to feed your soul. All right, let's get this thing started.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey yo.
Oh man, look at that! I made the thing work. I'm giving all right. You know what? I'm giving myself 10 seconds of credit for that. I have tried all day to get this all sort of organized and automated, and fucking nailed it. So yeah. Now of course I gave myself like way too much headroom, but that's neither here nor there. All right. So hello, hi. How are you? How are things? You good? You had a nice day? I don't know where you are, but where I am, it was gorgeous today. It was amazing today. It was warm and sunny and beautiful and delightful, and it made me feel good again. Which, honestly, frankly, I mean, look at everything you got going on. We'll take all the good days we can, you know what I'm saying? So to have a chance here, right now, today, to be here in your ears and in your face, to answer your questions, to help you do all the things you want to do, just like an amazing time. Just absolutely fantastic. And I'm really, really happy to be here. So, with that, I think we should get started. I think we should do the intro. Ready? You good? Hello, everyone. Hi. You're looking wonderful this evening. It's nice to see you. It's -6. Oh, okay. I'm glad you're happy for me. That's all I want in life. Please stay warm and wear socks. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, planners, dreamers, hopefuls, aspirants, trusters, workers, people who enjoy the value of good barbecue, anyone who's ever had the sheer delight of feeling the sun on your face, anyone who's ever counted on one hand the number of times they've made colossal errors in a single day, lovers of fine beverages, lovers of less fine beverages, anyone who knows exactly why $280 is better than several $1,000,000. You can Google that. Anybody who knows anything about the plagues of Galen and Justinian, you can Google that too. And anybody who's ever tried to sit down and figure out what it is they're going to do for like the next week and actually come up with a plan that doesn't suck. And most importantly, the comrades. Hello. It's so good to be here. It's so good to talk to all of you. It's so nice. I'm just doing well. It's great. It's been a while. Now I know I want to point out one thing that you're probably on your end unaware of. I have attempted and failed, but I attempted to simultaneously stream to both Twitch and YouTube via a website that is going to go nameless because I will probably have to pay them money in order to make this work better, because even as a free account, as they so claim, I couldn't get that shit to work. So, sadly, YouTube, you're watching this in the future, or the past, or however time works. You're watching this long after I've recorded it, but you guys here, hello, Twitch, hi. So nice to see all of you, wherever you might be, and even podcast listeners who are listening to this in the very recent, I literally just finished and now it's on the podcast feed. Hi, good to see you. Through no fault of my own, I continue to be John, the writer next door. It's wonderful. I'm thrilled. We have amazing questions tonight. There's going to be, now this is mostly a video thing, but there's going to be a lot of hands because some of these things necessitate gestures. And I'm hoping the enthusiasm and sheer thrill of answering some of these questions, as well as seeing the face I make when we cover some of these things, will delight and thrill you. I have no ad. I have no promo. I am still not sponsored by Raid Shadow of Legends, so I think we can all count that as a giant plus. However, if you're out there and you're working for 3M, any company that produces really good spa-level bathrobes, I'd also be okay with... I'd be okay with like the Bic pen company too, frankly, because I could always use more pens. And if your company produces mugs that aren't really cheap, I'd be happy to accept a sponsorship there as well. But that all said, I hope you're doing okay. I really and truly do. We've been through the ride lately. I have to admit, my Monday night where we talked about all different kinds of just odds and ends and hodgepodge, I wasn't feeling it Monday. I did the best I could. It's out there. You can go check it out over on the YouTube. But I'm in a better mood today. I'm in a better place today. And it's my thrill. If you've never heard this before, if you've never been here before, it is my thrill to absolutely, positively help you succeed at whatever creative thing you're doing. Can't wait. Can't goddamn wait. Let's go have a good time. Let's go answer some questions. Let's go help people succeed. Let's go do this stuff. Here we go. First question. Question number 1. Oh boy, howdy. Here we go. What's one practical thing a writer can do to protect themselves and their work from editors who want to steal it? All right, look. The reason why the camera is dead on me is so that I can lean right here so that people watching this can see my face when I make the following face. Pause for face. Because this question comes up with a stunning amount of regularity, an absolutely shocking amount. The number of people who are like, oh shit, somebody's going to come and steal my work is boggling to me, because when you ask them, hey, have you ever had your work stolen? Everybody, every fucking buddy gives me some kind of weird urban legend. Well, I heard about somebody who did this and I saw that, and what about this? And I read somewhere that. Yeah, I also read the story about the girl who had Pop Rocks and drank soda and her head exploded. I'm not saying that theft doesn't happen. Theft happens. But theft doesn't happen to the degree that everybody should be like cowering creatively and prohibiting themselves from moving forward in their process. Where this goes and how this comes up, people get real defensive when I get on this, because I get fired up about this, because it's not necessarily a stupid question, but you are wasting your time and brain space worrying that somebody's going to steal your idea for a few reasons, and I'd like to detail them for you. One, you can't do anything with an idea. It's just an idea. They're not covered by law. They just live as a chemical, electrical thing in your brain. They're ideas. They're every goddamn where. You can't protect them. And if your idea is that good, we'll get there in a minute, but if your idea is that good, chances are you will have another good idea. So, I mean, how often do we sit down and write and then all of a sudden, like 2 chapters in, holy shit, there's another idea. See the face I'm making? If you're using this as a shield to prevent yourself from, I don't have to submit more work, I don't have to give it to critique partners, I don't have to put it out there, somebody could steal it. What that suggests, aside from the fact that you're just afraid to put your stuff out there and see what response you get because you're afraid of being judged, you're also suggesting that your idea is so great that it's worth stealing. Now, to be fair, maybe it is. Maybe you have great ideas. It is theoretically possible in the quantum math that is existence. But more than likely, you have not thought of a thing that somebody else hasn't already thought of. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have the idea. That doesn't mean you can't feel the idea or pursue the idea. It just means that you're not the first person to have, like, a magical person on a quest. It's been done before. We've been telling stories for millennia. Chances are some version of your story is out there already. What's important and what's critical is that you are the only one who can tell your story. Just you. You're the only one who's going to tell it your way. Other people can try. Other people can come close. But you're the only one who can put it your way, so why not put it out there? Now, let's address the theft thing. Just come at it from a different direction. If you're talking about editors in a traditional publishing space, they don't have the time to steal the idea, file the serial numbers off, and claim it as their own. Why? Because they have so many other things to do, other manuscripts, other meetings, other time-wasting events. They have other shit on their plate. And unless your idea is so goddamn flawless right from the jump that it would take a minimum amount of time and effort, they're not. Why? Now, maybe you're going to say, well, what about freelance editors, Sean? What about freelancers? You can't trust freelancers. First of all, I'm a freelancer, and I resent your implication. Second of all, I don't have time either. The amount of time and effort and work it would take for me to steal your idea, clean it up, polish it, and put it into position to put it out, in addition to all the other shit I have to do in a given day, no. When am I going to have lunch? I don't have the time. Most people don't have the time. Your idea is not that, like, amazing. Like, it's amazing you made it. Hooray. You're literally a magician. You've created something from nothing. Good for you. That's awesome. But to think that it's so genius and so vaunted that immediately the first thing somebody else is going to do is steal it, I can't tell if it suggests supreme arrogance or an absolutely naive sense of how people get through this creative effort we call art making. So one practical thing a writer can do to protect themselves and their work, well, if you really want to protect it, never show it to a person, and then never come and tell me that you're having trouble getting published. Because if you want to absolutely 1000% guarantee nobody steals it, you can never introduce it to another person, ever. But if that seems to defeat the purpose of the goal you have in mind, if you're not going to be able to get your goal unless you do that, the best thing you can do is just produce the best story you can. And then it'll go out into the world and find a home somewhere if you're diligent about it and if you pursue it. It doesn't need to be, like, shepherded constantly under guard. It's not that special. It's just not. It's not going to be that special. It's never going to be that special. It's only going to be that special to you for a very short period of time, and then you're going to get sick of it and tired with it and frustrated with it. And then you're going to realize this is a business and it's not the Happy Dough Fun Factory where we're just sprinkling little fairy dust all over the place, and you're going to get back to work. Don't sweat this, and don't use it as a shield to hide. It's just not worth it. Focus on your work. Produce your work. How else are you going to accomplish your goal? And honestly, if you were really still surrounding yourself with people who you have a vague inkling that they could be the kind of people who would steal this, why are you hanging out with these people? Why are you talking to them? Why are you engaging with them? Go find different people. Just because they were the first people who came along or the first people who paid attention to you, but they give you that weird sort of like vibe, like it's real suspect, you don't have to engage with it. Go, it's fine. Just find better people. Keep doing your work. On we go to the next one. Question 2. What are 3 things I should focus on when I'm giving feedback to another writer? It was really hard to nail down just 3. It was legit hard to come up with 3 things, but here are 3 things. 1. What exactly is the actionable, practical thing I'm going to tell this other person? Because I don't want to just tell them, oh, it was nice. Oh, I liked it. Oh, it was good. Yeah, it's fine. Because that doesn't do anything. That, You can't put that in marketing. Like 3 stars, it was okay, is not effective marketing. It's not going to help you sell your book. And describing it as it was good, but then not following it up doesn't help explain a strength of the book either. It just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. So you want to give like actual practical point toable on the pageable feedback. Oh, I really like the characterization. I really like the way you had these action scenes spaced out. I really like the way that you have this dialogue. I really like the way that you have this, like, holy shit, every time there's a plane, something blows up. Whatever it is, what's the actionable thing you're going to tell this person? Now, maybe it's critical. Maybe it's like, hey, every time you use a semicolon, you're way off base, or none of your dialogue from this character it doesn't sound right to my ear. It sounds muddy, or there's too many words, or not enough words, or who knows what. What's the thing you're going to tell them? Sort that out first. That's job number 1. Job number 2, once we know what it is we're going to tell these people, whomever they might be and whatever it is we're telling them, what's the best way, the clearest way for me to do that without sounding like an asshole? Now, this is a pretty straightforward thing, because you could just say your shit sucks. Like, I don't know what the hell you think you were doing with your exposition, but this is hot garbage. I'm not asking you to write a check that your mouth can't cash. And I'm not asking you to suddenly, like, develop some kind of incredible critique swagger. Save that for the people who can, back that up. But by and large, you don't want to be a jerk about it, especially because you know exactly how personal and intimate feedback is for you. So imagine it's the same way for another person. We're going to practice something called compassion. So we want to find a way to deliver our feedback in a way that doesn't make us feel like shit and doesn't make them feel like shit, whatever it might be. So maybe we're going to, talk about this really poor character's dialogue, this dialogue that's just not working. And we're going to find a way to say it like, this character X, and their dialogue, it's just not clicking for me. It's missing something. I think maybe it's too long, or it's too wordy, or it's just unclear whenever they speak. I get a sense that like the story kind of wanders a little bit. You're not calling them trash. You're not telling them to quit. You're not telling them to, chuck it all in or whatever. You're trying to find a nice way of saying a possibly harsh thing. That's the second item. This takes practice, and you're going to mess it up. I've been doing this for 2 decades. I mess it up. To the point where I am also known for not doing that. Like, if you come to me and ask me for some feedback, it's a rough thing, I will tell you flat out, hey, this ending is terrible. But that's because I know you can do better, because I read the rest of your book and the rest of it wasn't like this. So I don't know what happened on the ending. I'll follow it up. It'll be a thing. But by and large, if you're giving feedback to another writer, make it actionable, figure out how you're going to deliver it. And then, third thing, what sort of response do I want them to have to the thing I'm about to tell them? Now, you can't control this, but you can kind of give them a ballpark. You can kind of give them a range, because you never know if somebody's going to be like, oh my God, you hate me. You don't know. But we can at least sort of steer things a little bit. We can give a little bit of some English on the ball, as it were. Because when I deliver the feedback, and I do it in a kinder way, I'm hoping that at the I don't want you to like fall on your knees and, oh my God, John, you're amazing. There's a time and place for that. But at the same time, I also don't want you to be like, oh, son of a bitch, what the hell does John know? I can't control it, but I'd like to keep you out of like the anger mopey stage. So how do I think you're going to receive this? Well, it depends on how I say it. So if I keep things soft and I keep things moving and I sound somewhat kind and compassionate in what I'm saying, as long as I don't totally water down the feedback itself in order to like overextend the niceness. I don't want to like hyper sugarcoat legitimate problems, because that's not a thing. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure everybody is receiving the feedback they're due and receiving the assistance they need. And sometimes that means we have to tell them harsh things, but we don't need to do that in a way that, crushes them under our heel. So we think about their response, and we adjust our statement. We think for number 3, we think about number 2, and then we make sure that we still are talking about number one, if that makes sense. What are you going to tell them? How are you going to tell them? If you tell them that way, how do we think they could react? What's our gut feeling? Does that mean we might want to change how we're going to say it? If yes, change it. If not, no. Those are the three things I would focus on, no matter what your feedback is. Because you might just have feedback of, everything's great, I'm just not sure what's happening in this chapter. Or you could have 75 things of feedback. Quantity isn't really important here. It's about delivery. Good delivery. Even it doesn't need, just so we're clear, it doesn't need to be hyper technical. You don't need to come at somebody and go like, well, the narrative load is really, overspread across multiple points. Like, you don't need to drop, like, tuck your, push your glasses up your nose, tuck your shirt in level knowledge. You can explain things in common, softer terms. Man, I don't get what's going on here. Is the very soft version of this scene's construction is poorly established. Just be a person. Just be a person and talk to another person. It's going to make a difference. It really is. It really super is. Good question. On we go. One more. Question number 3. How do I choose a pen name? Also something that comes up a lot, especially because pen names seem to be sort of the tool for a lot of people use pen names. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's very common to see pen names with writers who want to sort of distance themselves from the work for whatever reason, because it's going to upset somebody, or they're embarrassed about what they're writing, but they still want to write it, or they want to have some level of anonymity for whatever reason. That's fine. That's totally fine. I don't personally agree with this strategy. I think it's art, and you should put your name on your art. But that's me. That's me. But how do you choose a pen name? Well, there are several naming conventions for pen names, and some of them are collective. Everybody else is doing it, so I'll do the same thing. And some are genre-based. For instance, in romance, with romance pen names, you're going to find some amount totaling between 2 and 4 syllables. Generally, the last name is going to have 2 syllables, and the first name also 2 syllables. And you're going to try to have one of those 2 names, be it the first or surname, be far more impactful than the other. So you might have something exotic in the beginning and something kind of plain, for lack of a better word, as an ending. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. That's just a common trend in pen names. You could do something totally different. Hell, your pen name could be Old Broken Typewriter. It doesn't have to be, a straight up name in the sense of like, well, my name is John and your name is whatever your name is. It can be just a title, just a label for a thing. How you pick one, make a list, and well, I want to use this name, or I like this word, or I like this idea or this vibe. What language evokes those things for me? Romance or erotica writers in particular want to have something that's got a little bit of a sensual sound to it, so that it feels a little sexy. It's just part of the overall package of the story and package of the storyteller. So what kind of words are suggestive of that? Do we want certain sounds and certain syllables? What sounds more, ooh, is it, do we want a real stiff name like Matilda? Let me think of a real stiff last name. Matilda Denzabenzowitz. That's not terribly ooh, in the same way that like Nashville Rivers is. You want to look for something that's evocative. Pen names are all about evocation. They used to be about sort of detaching yourself while also making a subtle jab. So you'd find pen names going as far back as like political satire or social satire, where, a concerned citizen would then write like essentially the text version of a diss track. I don't know how else to describe it. They'd go after somebody, but because they would use a pen name, it would sort of be unclear. Well, I wonder who that concerned citizen is, and they'd sort of use that as part of their platform. It doesn't specifically matter so long as the pen name allows you a level of separation to accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. Maybe that's liberation so that you can write as a different person. Maybe that's protection to prevent, exposure for who you are. Maybe that's just a level of freedom because, oh my God, there's this different person. I can get away by being this different person, by being this character. I can say and do things I myself might not feel comfortable doing. In the same way that like a wrestler wears a mask and they're not quite the mask. But pen names come down to choice. A couple syllables, a couple sounds to help convey vibe, mood, or atmosphere. And it really can be that simple. It also doesn't have to be a proper name and surname. It commonly is, but it doesn't need to be. You can slap anything as the, who wrote this book? Person, Alan Smithy, anybody. You just make a choice. You can always change it. It doesn't get etched in stone. You can literally change your pen name right up until the point where you have to go submit the book and it becomes a thing. You can even, sign a publishing deal and say, hey, I'm going to change my pen name. And that's as long as the book hasn't gone off to the printers, you're okay. And you can always publish under one pen name and then change it later. That's fine too. You can always have a pen name and then, later recant and reveal yourself for who you are, like Richard Bachman to Stephen King. It's entirely up to you what you want to accomplish with it. But don't overthink it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be evocative. And on to chat we go. Does anyone here? Hello, by the way. Does anyone here have any questions about anything? What kind of tea do I have today? I like how multiple people are now asking me for my tea choices. That makes me happy. Tonight's tea is Indian green. It's real strong. Because honestly, I started drinking it like an hour ago, and I haven't quite finished it yet. So I'm working my way through. And I've also just got a regular African black that I had originally poured for the sake of drinking here, but I'm still working on the other tea. I'm going to just be double fisting tea for a while. It's fine. I don't have anything super big to do. So I'm going to be up for a while anyway with work. Have some tea. Good questions. Love that. I love that this is becoming a tea thing. It makes me think about how I wanted to start an OnlyFans that was just root beer reviews. I still might, not even on an OnlyFans, but I still might just do just a string of root beer reviews. This tastes like vanilla. This tastes like sassafras. This tastes like chocolate. This tastes like this. Drink this. Don't drink this. Mix this and pair this with this food. Do I have a preferred... Hang on, this is a good one. I want to make sure Do I have a preferred method for developing the middles of stories? Now, by middle, I'm assuming you mean the second act. Yes. It's shockingly like the method I have for developing the beginnings and endings of stories. So, middles of stories in particular are just the same thing as beginning and ending. It's just that it's more development rather than payoff. So you're still going to have scene construction. You're still going to move towards your end goal. You're still, especially in your second act, you're ramping up to climax. You don't really need to start solving too many things until you're much deeper into the middle of the story. You want to have it's think of the slope of a triangle. We're ramping up. We're building up to the height. So anything that happens in the middle of the story should be moving us towards the inevitable conflict at the top of the A plot. You can introduce some B plot. You can develop some B plot. You can introduce the A plot. You already did that already, but you can develop that A plot and develop and then develop and then develop and then develop. Building on things, organizing things. This is why it's so critical to know what the hell your scenes are going to be. There's no magic trick to it. There's no in the middle of the story, one thing is supposed to happen. A billion things can happen. It's just that the middle of the story begins with the introduction of plot and it ends with the start of the climax. So anything from adding more material to the A plot, adding more world building, developing your B plots, maybe resolving a B plot if it's really, really small. All of those things, however many of those things there are, everything in that middle of the story is keeping the reader engaged because the material you've previously introduced, first act, end of first act, beginning of second act, is now being developed and carried forward. So that ultimately, by the time we're done the middle of the story, we are ready to go to the climax where we're going to see the inevitable conflict, the inevitable intersection of all these points that reach a high moment of unavoidable tension. Oh my God, we finally have to go fight the bad guy. Oh my God, we have to see what's going to happen. And we've stayed along this entire story to do this entire thing because up to this point, we've been building and building and building and building to this. That's how you develop the middle. Figure out what your beginning is, find all your threads, and then pace out. Okay, I'm going to develop, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. However many, doesn't matter. I'm using 5 in my example. I'm gonna do 1 and 2, and then I'm going to develop 3, and then 4, and then 5, or maybe I'm going to do 4 first or 5 first. The specifics don't ultimately matter. Everybody's going to do their own thing, but you're just going to keep building to climax. Don't rush there. Nor should you dawdle. It's the middle of a story. Everybody's middle sags. It's just the nature of long-form storytelling. Rather than try to avoid that, and rather than do the opposite and super lean into it and just write a middle of the book, remember that the purpose of the middle of the book is to get us to the climax. To introduce things, to develop things, to build on the existing material. Beyond that, it's just scene upon scene upon scene, and you try not to think about it in terms of, this is the beginning of my book. This is the middle of my book. Okay. In the same way that, like, when you're eating a meal, you don't stop and go, this is the middle of my sandwich. I'm in the middle of dinner. No, you're just having dinner. There's nothing wrong with contextualizing things into beginning, middle, and end. That's fine. But you want to go past that. You want to get into, well, it's just a set of scenes. How many scenes? Yes, some amount of scenes. But again, no matter how many scenes it is, you're building to the climax. When you get to the climax, when the next thing you would do would be the climax, you are done the middle of the book. And then you move to the climax, and then when the climax is done, you move to the end of the book. So, preferred method, you're making scenes. Same as always. Wonderful question. Any others? Shall we march on? Oh, here we go. All right, look, I'm moving in close. Is there anything wrong? You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go full screen. Hi. Is there anything wrong with asking an editor for sample pages? See the face? Here we go. Strap in. Here, have one of these. You know what? We're even gonna ring the bell. Oh. The bell has been rung. Is there anything wrong with asking an editor for sample pages? Yeah, there's loads wrong. Here we go. So let's suppose you want to get a haircut. You need one. You want one. Okay. Would you go to your barber, your salon, your stylist, your hair cutting person and go, hey, hair cutting person, I don't know if you and I are a good fit. I don't know if we're going to vibe. Could you just cut 10% of my hair? And if I like the way you hold the scissors, then I'll let you cut the rest. You don't want to use that as an example. You're going to tell me, oh, it's John, it's not like that. Okay. Your car is making a noise. It's not doing the thing your car is supposed, or you think your car is supposed to be doing. So you take it to the auto mechanic. And you walk in and you tell the auto mechanic, hey, my car is making this noise. I don't think it should be making this noise. But I don't know you. And I'm not sure how it is you do the mechanic thing. So could you show me like the first 10 to 15% of what it is you're going to do? And then if I like that, if I'm okay with that, then I'll let you do the rest of my car. Oh, that's not it either. You don't think that's a thing? Okay. Let's go even simpler. Your toilet is leaking and it's spilling water all over your floor. Clearly you need a plumber. Clearly you need someone to fix this before it gets worse. So you call the plumber. Plumber says, yeah, sure. Shows up. There you go. But you say, wait, plumber. Wait. I've had terrible experiences with plumbers before, and I'm just trying to understand how this process goes. I'm just trying to see what it's like. I've never really worked with a good plumber before, and you came very highly recommended because you want to pad the plumber's ego for some reason in my example. But I don't know. I don't want to know what to do. So maybe like if you just start, like tell me how much it's going to be, and then like if you start doing the plumbing, and I like the way you're holding the wrench. Or I like the idea where, whatever you're going to do, you're going to make my toilet stop leaking water all over my floor. I know it's leaking water now. That's not important, plumber. The important thing is that you and I have to have a vibe. You and I have to, I have to feel okay with you, even though I've hired you to do a damn job because my toilet is spilling water all over my floor. That's it. That's what you're doing every time you're like, hi, can I get sample pages? I want to see how you edit. Then hire the editor. I want to see how you cut hair. Then go to the stylist. I want my car to stop making that noise. Then go to the mechanic. It's a job. Like I can't tell you the number of frustrating times where somebody comes in and is like, I don't know you. Okay, have a conversation with me, then you'll know me. That's why there's a free 30-minute appointment on the website. So that we can have a conversation. So that you can talk to me and get a sense of who I am and what I'm going to do. And you can ask all the questions you want. Because fun fact, if you book a 30-minute appointment, anybody in the chat knows this probably already, I very rarely keep to 30 minutes. I'm notorious for going over. So come ask me questions. You want to find out if we vibe? Come talk to me. And then when it comes time to do the work, give me your goddamn work. Because the other downside of this, the other thing nobody wants to talk about is that if you, let's say you have, a 10-page chapter. If you chop that into 2-page chunks and shop it to 5 editors, a sample's sometimes mostly free. You just got free editing out of 5 people and you can ghost all of them now. Is that what you want to do? Is there anything wrong with asking an editor for sample pages? Yeah. Either commit to it or don't commit to it. If you're worried about, I don't know if you're going to be, vibe with me. That is basically the way of saying, I hope you're nice to me. So, how about we have a conversation instead? Just I'll talk to you and be nice to you. If you're hiring me, now this isn't, granted, I am known for somebody who will tell you when your shit's not working, when your toilet is spewing and when your car's making noise. I'll tell you what's wrong. I'll tell you how to fix it. I'll even tell you why it's making the noise it's making. But I'm not going to go out of my way to go, oh my God, you're such a good person. Good for you. You did this thing. You wrote the words. That's your job. That's what you're supposed to do. I'll tell you if I laughed at a joke. I'll tell you I liked the scene. But I'm not there to hold your hand. I'm there to do the job. Do you want the plumber to sit there and go, gosh, you really clogged the hell out of this toilet? No, you want the plumber to fix it. So fix it. The important thing here is that you understand what the function of a sample page is. And it's to see if the feedback you get from another person meshes well with your own estimation of your work. You're going to see if somebody's going to be real nice to you. That's garbage. Just talk to them like a person. And if you like them, if they seem like they're going to help you, if they seem like they know what they're talking about because you've talked to them, Then move forward with the business relationship. Pay them money, give them your work, and have magic happen. Just like a plumber, just like a mechanic. Don't farm around with your sample pages, and don't treat it as though it's some kind of incredible litmus test because I'm the customer and I'm always right. I could give a shit. Really, I have turned down so many people who were like, well, you like, I need to impress you? I've been doing this half my life. Isn't that impressive? Like, I've done this for hundreds of books and hundreds of people. You can buy them on Amazon. Like, my shit's out there. This is why I don't do sample pages, by the way. It just doesn't do, it's not good. Like, don't do that. Just either commit to it or don't commit to it. And don't cage it in the idea, or don't wrap it in the idea of, well, I just want to make sure you're a good fit. No. We're not dating. You don't have to like hang out with me. I'm not going to invite you to the house and have you hold a cat. I could care less. We're here to do a job. You want to come hang out with me and be my friend? That's awesome. But that's going to be a separate thing from, hey, we're doing this work. Sample pages are a trap and a nightmare waiting to happen. Don't do them. Either commit or don't commit. And this is why there are kill fees. A kill fee, if you don't know what that is a clause in a contract that says if this relationship between editor and writer is hot garbage on a hot day, like it's just terrible, then everybody can walk away. The writer gets their work back, done to whatever point it is, and the editor gets paid for whatever amount of work they've already done. That's it. And then we walk away, and neither twain shall reunion. We part ways in good and gentle Verona. Off we go. Has that happened? Yes. Do I tell all my friends about it? Mostly my friends know the cases because they hey, it's that guy again. But it happens. It doesn't happen very often. Now, maybe it doesn't happen because I'm good at my job, or maybe it doesn't happen because most people aren't jerks about it. Could be both. Could be either. Who knows? But you don't have to engage in this. Also, good evening. Hello. Hi. You don't have to be part of this horseshit ritual. Like, you don't have to do that. If you're out there wanting to be an editor, which is awesome, and everybody should give it a shot. If you want to swim in these pools, you don't have to do that. You don't want to do it, don't do it. It's not going to ruin your business, not going to ruin your life. If anything, it's going to sort of self-select out the people who would probably give you indigestion and gray hair. It's not worth it. Okay? The problem is, in order to go full screen, I clicked like way down here, so you're going to have to bear with me a minute while I click back over here into question 5. How does a query reader know so quickly if what they're reading is right for them? Okay. A marvelous question. Love this question. Because this question seemed, at least in the email it got sent to me in, they wanted to know if there was a specific thing, like a tangible, on-the-page thing that the query reader was looking for, a magic phrase, a shibboleth, some kind of indicator, right? It's not. What the query reader is reading for is potential. Now, whether they're your pimp, your agent, or an editor or a publisher or just somebody reading a query letter, all those things, all those people in all those roles are looking for the sales potential. What could come next? What's next down the road with this story? Could it be sold? Who would I sell it to? How would I sell it? These are the things that we start talking about and thinking about with the query letter. It's not concrete. It's not definite. It doesn't have to be a certain way. It's just that the ball starts rolling with the query, because your query is your first point of marketing, because you're trying to get somebody to say yes to the book, which is the same thing you're doing when you're trying to sell the book. It's just a different yes. So how does a query reader know so quickly? Because they're looking for potential. And if the way you have crafted your message, be it short or long, a pitch or a tweet or a query letter or a marketing document or sales copy, all that stuff, they're looking for the potential in the language. Are you suggesting things? Are you evoking things? That's what they're looking for. It's not a magic phrase. Oh, they've used the word, quackreversal. Perfect. Sign them. No, it's more of a general statement of, hey, the way they're talking about this book makes me think that, one, I want to read it, and two, I think other people will read it. That's exactly what the query reader is looking for. And when you look at enough queries over enough time, you can develop, just by reading or listening, if you're in person or whatever, you can hear a pitch that's like, yeah, that's not really encouraging me to say yes or encouraging me to want to read the book. That's exactly what they're looking for. That's how they know so quickly. A lot of practice, and they're thinking about potential rather than the concrete, like, oh, they've mentioned their character in the second sentence. Check. Nope. It's just plain and simple the potential you are developing in your query or marketing stuff. That's how a query reader knows so quickly. Great question. One more. Oh my God, it's gentle advice. How do I know when/if I have too many cliches/tropes with my character? Okay, we might have to go full screen again for this, but I think you can see my face. This is important, and I want you to hear me when I say this. I want to get this across to you, okay? Cliches and tropes are not universally the enemy. They're not. It's okay. Here we go. Ready for the controversial statement? It's okay to have some cliches and some tropes. It's all right. You don't want super many. You want a couple, because some of them are unavoidable. Like, oh my God, that's your protagonist. Hey, guess what? Just being a protagonist is a trope, because you have to have one for a story. But how do you know when you have too many? When you stack all the very broad, generic templates that are cliches and tropes, and you don't change them and you don't tailor them, you just layer them one on top of the other, on top of the other. They're an orphan. They're a person of prophecy. They have a special skill not seen in a population before. They don't know what they're doing. They find a mentor. They have a troubled backstory. They have to confront some part of their backstory to move forward. If that's all you do, like you're just playing Mad Libs and filling in the blank, then the fact that you have so many cliches and tropes becomes very, very apparent, because you're not tailoring them. You're just generically piling them together. What you have to do isn't so much avoid the cliches and tropes. Sometimes, yes, sometimes you want to totally avoid them or subvert them whenever you can. But if you're going to use them, tailor them, tweak them, understand them so you can take them apart, or, at least disguise the fact to some degree that it's a cliche and trope. It might be a cliche. Oh, you have a character with a troubled backstory. I bet they have stubble and or abs. And then you just write it and move on, and don't call attention to it, and don't have like a giant blinking neon sign so that everybody's aware that it's a cliche. You just hit it and go. How do you know when you have too many? When it just feels more like a paint by numbers thing. It's just, well, this is just how it is, and there's no other development beyond that. You're not giving the character anything that isn't a cliche or trope. You're just finding different cliches and bolting them together. One of the nice things about cliches and tropes is that they're really, like Velcro, really attachable to a lot of different things. But the goal, the point, is to combine that stuff, combine the cliches and tropes with your own individual spin and torque and work and angles and vectors. Put your own stuff in there. Leave some fingerprints. And it's going to make all the difference whether or not there are cliches and tropes. Don't run and hide from cliches. Like, oh my God, I've written a cliche. Burn everything. No, they're just tools in the toolbox. But at some point, we have to just stop doing the generic thing and start pushing out on our own and seeing what we can come up with. Which means you have to trust yourself, which can be difficult, especially if you're coming from a support system that wasn't really big on esteem or confidence. But you can get there. And if you need help, there's plenty of help out there you can ask for. Wonderful question. Wonderful question. Have a harp. Are there any more questions about anything from anybody here. There are so many new people. Hello, new people. It is wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here. Shall we move on? Yeah. Let's move. Do I have any favorite trope? And here we go. I knew we'd get there. I keep forgetting is there a delay? I think there might be a slight delay between me saying a thing and you hearing a thing. That's fine. Do I have any favorite tropes or cliches? I do. I am a big sucker. I am a huge sucker for a mentor character you have to kill. Fucking love those things. Also, any sort of ill-fated relationship, the two lovers who can't get back together, the two people who are constantly, running into each other, the Burr Hamilton kind of vibe. The sort of heavy duty, like one day your hubris or one day your boldness will catch up with you, and it's just it's a matter of time. I love that stuff because it gives your character such enormous freedom until that moment to just get bigger and brasher and bolder and more risky, and it really brings that character together and brings that character to life. Other cliche I really like. I adore, and I don't frequently use that word, but I adore the cliche of like the what's called a combined party, which is you have like one wholesome character, one rogue with a heart of gold, and then one smart character. Now, sometimes there are three people, sometimes there's two, sometimes they split the role, sometimes it's just one person kind of trying to fill in all these gaps. I adore that concept, again, because of the potential story freedom it gives you. Whether it gives you three separate people and therefore three separate arcs, or you pair them off, or you bump one of them off, I think it's really good fertile ground. In terms of overall structure, I'm a sucker for first person. I'm a sucker for a protagonist that's weary, that's like been through some shit. I like that. Love that. Go out of my way to track that stuff down. I think it for me, it really builds a better relationship between me, the reader, and they, the character. Love that stuff. Now, here's another great question. Thank you for it. Here's another one. I'm showing some of my tabletop background. Yeah, I figured I am. All right, so here's the question. How do I change a trope? Okay, step one. You got to be able to identify the trope. Now, yes, in theory, you can Google it because there are lists of tropes. But Googling it and knowing the name of it is somewhat incidental. Although, to be fair, social media and the internet loves to talk about the titles of tropes as if everybody knows what the fuck they are. You look at something like TV tropes, oh my God, they want to give you all the jargon all the time as if the jargon is enough. Hint, jargon's not enough. It's just a label for a thing. But you want to be able to identify what it is about the trope that makes it the trope. Like, so we have... let me think of an example that I hadn't talked about. You know what a himbo is? The himbo best friend? If you know that's the trope you have, and you know you want to change it, you got to be able to identify what it is that can be changed in the trope. And yes, you can lose hours of your life on TV tropes. I have. Yes, I have. It was awful. I had a whole relationship built around TV tropes. It was a nightmare. That's a different story for a different stream. But absolutely a colossal waste of my time. You have no idea what a himbo is. Himbo. A himbo is a male bimbo. So it's sort of a guy who's maybe not the most street smart, and it's maybe somebody who's just kind of dumb in one or more ways, and just kind of like relying on their attractiveness or their vapidity, their sense of just like, oh, I don't know. They're, a little vapid, not always the smartest, but they're well-natured. They're well-meaning. That's a himbo. Kevin in the all-women Ghostbusters is a himbo. It's a male bimbo. I did not name them. It's a weird word. but it encapsulates a lot. So if you know that's the trope you have and you know that's the trope you want to change, you need to identify what it is about the himbo you want to change. Do you want to make them smart? Because if you make your himbo smart, they're not a himbo anymore, so you've changed the trope. You got to identify the elements of the trope. Let's not use a himbo. Let's use orphaned child of prophecy, right? So we have no parents. They're gone, done. But we know this child is special for whatever reason, whether it's intentional or otherwise, they're special. How can we change this trope? Well, if we make them not an orphan, that's a big change, but then we wouldn't be an orphaned child of prophecy. They'd just be a child of prophecy, which might be a very valid thing you want to do for your story. The fact that you've changed from orphan child of prophecy to child of prophecy is going from one trope to the other, which isn't bad. It's just a choice. But let's say you want to keep them an orphan, but we want to change something else. Do they have to be a child? Could we have an orphaned person of prophecy? Maybe we want to change the prophecy. That's usually the most common change in the person of prophecy pile of tropes. Usually they change the prophecy to make it something specific, or usually they tie it towards an antagonist. Only one person can defeat the evil guy. And it just so happens to be the protagonist. So how do we change that? You craft it so that anybody could beat the villain. But for whatever reason, it's this protagonist that does it. A great example of that subversion specifically is that there's a Disney cartoon. I think it's called Mickey and the Giants, where Mickey is a tailor for whatever goddamn reason. Mickey is a tailor, and he's killing some flies in the shop, and he throws the window open and says, "I killed 7 in one blow." And then all of a sudden people think he's talking about, oh my God, you killed 7 giants. Well, go kill that giant. And we sort of fall into a quest. Subverting a trope, whatever it might be, changing a trope, challenging a trope, they're all degrees of the same idea. Affecting a trope in some way means you got to know the parts you're going to affect, how you're going to affect them, and whether or not that's a good fit for your story. Your story's first. Always story first, period. Done. Story first. It's the brave little tailor. I never knew the name of that, but that's the thing I'm talking about. You want to bend the tropes to your story rather than bend your story to the trope. Which means you got to understand what tropes you're going to use, what tropes you're going to not use, what parts of the tropes you're going to use, and how everything works together to tell the best story possible, because story first. I hope that answered your question. Let me know if it didn't. Let me know if it did. And I can break it down even further if you want, but let me know. I think that's enough to at least get you started for now. It's a good question. Cool. On we go. Question 7. Oh man, I'm going to make another face. Question 7. I don't think my story has a theme. How can I check? See the face? Here we go. If your story doesn't have a theme, I'm telling you right now, you're going to rewrite. There's no way around it. You will end up rewriting your thing. Not necessarily totally abandoning the whole story, but you're going to need a new draft. Because a theme isn't just the presence of an idea in a few scenes. A theme is yes, you can ask an editor, but I'm assuming you want to be able to do this on your own first. A theme is a river. It's a current of an idea that moves through the whole story. And there are different scenes, not just scenes stacked up next to each other, but throughout the whole book in very different places that illustrate different components of a theme. Wouldn't it have a theme regardless? No, you can have a story without a theme. I'll get there in a second. So you've got this theme, whatever it might be, and it's got to wind its way through the story in lots of different ways, because it's not just, let's say you have a theme of found family. You want to have different elements of the found family theme rather than just repeat found family as a block over and over and over, which is fine. If you're writing a kid's story, something early reader, middle grade reader, something like that, you can repeat the block. It's very simplistic. Dr. Seuss did that shit all the time. Totally legit. But if you're writing adult fiction, if you're really trying to move through more intensive writer waters, you're trying to move into more complicated but, non-juvenile story structure, your theme isn't just the same thing repeated over and over. It's different permutations and facets of that thing. So found family, for instance, yeah, you're going to have scenes where you gather these groups. You're going to have scenes where all the people are assembled together, but you're also going to have scenes where you're building that family and showing the tension of that family and the reason why that family has to get together and the reason what's holding the family together, what's testing the family. All of these things are parts of the found family theme. So when you need to check if you have one, first, if you were intending to have one, what were you intending? And can you point to multiple different times, multiple different parts of the theme show up? If you don't have a theme, and it is possible for stories to not have themes, it's because your story then is just a procession of actions. Person goes here and does this, person goes there and does that, person over there does this, person over there does that, and there's a plot. And there's a reason why they're doing stuff, but there's no lesson. There's no idea imparted to the reader beyond just rotating through action, event, and consequence. The question is it okay to not have a theme? And the answer, mostly no. Sometimes yes. Sometimes you can get away with not having a theme, as in middle grade readers, right? So those books we would get in elementary school, some of them don't have themes. It's up to us down the road later to recontextualize your book and understand the theme. And the reason why early readers don't go heavy on theme is because their job is to teach people how to read. But by and large, for the most part, a theme is something that's going to stick with the reader far after they're done thinking about, well, look, how cool was that character? How cool was that fight scene? Because once you strip away what would be covered by the CG budget or the just general sense of if I were watching this on TV, how cool does it look? You got to get past that stuff. You got to get underneath the surface to what makes the story stick with you. Because I've seen plenty of cool movies that are great, but they're forgettable. They're dispensable. Man, that was a good story, but I'm not thinking about it 10 minutes later. I'm moving on to the next thing. A theme allows us to have that story resonate with us, click with us, connect with us, stick around with us, so that when we talk about it later, this thing really left an impact on me. That impact, for whatever kind of reason it is, even if we can't always put it into words, there's your theme. You need it. It's going to add that extra layer of oomph to your story. And if you don't have one, and you don't want to ask an editor because you're afraid they're going to tell you something you don't want to hear, look and see if you were intending one and you missed the mark, or if you plain old don't have one. Compare other works with similar theme. What am I aiming for? Because if you just read your story, now granted you're a biased source because you made the thing, so you know what you meant. So you're going to have to add some other people to this list to have them read it. But if they're looking for theme and they're not finding any, it is possible that it's not strongly apparent enough. You didn't put enough of it in. So maybe that means you need, instead of adding new scenes and fattening the thing up, that is a choice, but it's not my first choice. Take the scenes you have that you think illustrate the theme and better develop them. Say more there. Focus it. Clean it up. Polish it. But individually, you're looking for the elements of story that are beyond the special effects, beyond the action scenes, beyond the, oh yeah, that's the moment where you killed the guy. Discard the plot, discard the characters. Think about how the reader is going to connect with this stuff. Do you want them to resonate because I too have been in a situation where I thought nobody believed in me? That, by the way, is a theme. Find those things that help build a bridge between reader and character, rather than just, oh, it was so cool they did that, because we're not talking about comic books when we're 13. So we want to dig deeper. And if you can't find those things, you don't have one. And it's time to redraft and get that in there. If you're already questioning whether or not you don't have one, chances are you either do and you're not understanding what it is, or you've totally missed it. Yeah, I know that's very all of one or all of the other, but most of the time when we're questioning theme, it's because we're questioning the two extremes. But we can check by asking for feedback. It can be a little frustrating because you'll also find people who disagree with what the themes of a thing are, and that's totally valid, because if you say, oh, well, you have this theme of found family, and I say I have a theme of self-discovery, they're related to each other, yeah, but they're not exactly the same, but I can say the story has both. Totally fine. Good question. On we go to the next. Question number 8. What's the best way I can support my favorite authors? Well, aside from buying their work, the best thing you can do beyond buying their work is leaving reviews. Remember, we live in an algorithmic society when it comes to art. So being able to make their work that you liked, that you've positively reviewed or said something about, to make that work more visible to others so that they might also share or reach a new audience is one of the best ways to help, because if you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends, eventually you're telling the whole planet. Now, you can't guarantee that everybody's going to rush out and buy the book, but eventually you keep telling people, somebody will. You know, like with this stream, I can tell you a million times till I'm blue in the face, hey, tell your friends, come check this out. Hey, go over to Writer Next Door, sign up for the newsletter. You'll, every Monday you'll get a thing. And some people do and some people don't, but we got to keep trying. The best way you can support your favorite creative, because it's not just authors, it's also cover artists or sex workers or layout people or editors or anybody making a thing, anybody doing a thing. The best thing you can do in an algorithmic society like we have is leave reviews and talk about the experience you had. Oh man, I really loved that book. This person who, this book written by so-and-so and such and such, absolutely amazing. I think you'd love it. Here's a link. I'm still thinking about that TV show written by so-and-so. Just put it out there. There's nothing wrong with talking about a thing you liked. You don't have to embellish it. You don't have to, super, blow hot air up their ass. But at the same time, like, you can talk about the stuff you liked. It takes very little time. Seconds, minutes, maybe. You don't have to write like a whole big ass like doctoral dissertation as to all the things you loved about their work. It can be brief, but do it. Don't be one of those people who's like, yeah, one day I'm going to do it. One day. Make that one day be today. Make that one day be tomorrow. And just take your favorite book, the most recent thing you're reading, the thing you just read, and say something nice about it. Let somebody else have the same kind of good experience you have. It really does make a difference. It might not be the same as like, hey, here's some more money, but it doesn't always have to be that. Sometimes just telling and sharing this idea of like, hey, you got to check this out. This is fantastic. It helps everybody. It helps the person whose work you're promoting. It helps the other person because now all of a sudden their friend is telling them, hey, this will help you. And it's you doing a good thing for 2 people now. Like, everybody benefits. So leave a review. Talk about what you loved. Share it with others. Makes a huge difference. Awesome question. Question 9. I feel like that's not the same 9. Hang on a second. That might be last week's 9 and I forgot to change it. Give me 1 minute. I apologize. Chat. Yeah, that's totally the wrong 9. Here is the corrected question. Hang on. Here is the corrected question 9. Is there any difference between a flashback container and a flashback frame? Yes. So a flashback container is a scene set up that within that scene, there is a flashback. It is a scene by itself that contains a flashback in it. The whole scene is not just the flashback. It's flashback plus other stuff. That can be as simple as 2 people sitting down and saying, I remember a time. And then the screen does that, ooh, dissolvey thing. And then that's it. It is a flashback container is a scene that contains a flashback. It's in the name. A flashback frame is a scene that is just the flashback. And the frame itself is, sometimes we see this as italicized, like gives you a date, and that date is like April 7th, 1952 text. Back in the day, we used to italicize that kind of thing. We used to italicize the whole thing. I know, but this was back in the day. A flashback frame is the constructed non-story language. So that's stuff like the date, the timestamp, that kind of thing. Anything that normally in television might be like a graphic across the screen. 3 days ago, stuff like that. A flashback frame is the structural stuff that allows the scene to be a flashback by itself. That's the big difference. When you use one over the other, so you'll use a flashback frame when you just want to get to the flashback. It doesn't need a lot of setup. When you need some kind of setup or there's other stuff going on and the flashback is a very tiny part, you want to use a container. Great question. Now, this also makes me think that maybe I didn't finish laying the graphics out. So we might be back on this screen again. Who knows? Let's see what happens. It's been a long day. I didn't get everything done the way I wanted, but we'll try all the same all the way. All right, so let's do 10. Did I do the right 10? Yep, I did the right 10. I just didn't do 9. Here's 10. Question 10. If it's bad to describe skin tone with food words, yeah, it's bad. Don't do that. What can I use instead? Literally the rest of the human language. The reason why you don't want to describe skin tone with food words is because you're objectifying the person. I know they're a made-up person, and I know you're probably using it in favorable ways, but we don't want to turn this made-up person into an object. We don't want to suggest that what we do to these made-up people is also what we would do with these real people. I understand that it's very flattering. I understand that you're not meaning to be an asshole about it, but you're being an asshole about it. What you can use instead, other words. We don't have to objectify people. We don't have to describe them in various shades of food brown. There are other ways to describe brown, including all the adjectives for brown, or white, or beige, or whatever skin tones there may be. We don't always have to jump to food just because it's what you think might be the clearest descriptor of something. Here you go. Because there are food items out there that are colors that you wouldn't normally associate, like saying that somebody has skin like barbecued chicken. Okay, do you mean that in a red way, a brown way, a scorched way, a scarred way, or a medley? You don't want to objectify. You don't want to go out of your way to make the thing feel like an object, even if it's a made-up person. Caramel-colored eyes is a food thing. Hang on. I see both these questions. I'm going to get them one at a time. So caramel-colored eyes, that's a food. I understand it's positive. I understand it's accurate. I'm not doubting its accuracy. I am now challenging you to go, how else could I describe this color? Caramel, soft brown. It's going to sound and feel a little less clear, but we're trying to instill a better writerly habit. Because if you roll up to a real person in the real world and go, hey, you have real caramel-colored eyes, it is possible that person's going to go, oh, this person thinks I'm food, I'm an object that can be described in this way, and I'm not being treated like a person. This is the behavior I'd like you to not do. So we don't use food words to describe skin tone. This is particularly true of the vast and white people do this to non-white people. I don't know how else to say that, but it does happen everywhere. It's just very common in the white circles with the non-white people. there's some like deeply internalized shit there. But by and large, you want to think of people past food. I know they're made up folks. I know we just sort of crafted them out of nothing. But there's a whole language to use. We don't have to just stick to food in order to demonstrate color. Now, here's the next question. I've had recommendations that you can use wood tones. Yeah, I've seen that. Is it different objectification? Arguably, it is still objectifying. It's better than food because it at least demonstrates something that isn't so straightforward. Careful with things like soil and earth too. That's a very good point because then you're sort of equating the two people. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. That's why I'm pausing. Yeah, you want to be careful with soil and earth. You want to be careful. How do I, just 10 seconds. All right, I got it. Sorry. Thank you for waiting. Podcast people, I apologize for the silence. I was literally thinking of my answer. Here it is. If the word you use to describe another person, if the first thought the reader has when they encounter that word, if that thing you're immediately calling to mind is not a person, but an object, you're objectifying them. So if you want to talk to them like, oh, that person is mahogany. Well, my first thought when I hear the word mahogany is doors and desks. And I'm basically on some level saying, hey, this person and a desk have a lot in common. And other than being things made of atoms, they don't. This is one of those annoying gray areas for people because I start talking about it, and it's a valid point because the angle I'm taking here is, hey, there's a whole wide language to use in thousands and billions of different permutations to describe a human being in a way that paints a picture. But it so quickly can bend and turn into, oh my God, the PC police are here. Now we just can't describe things. No, you can describe things. You just can't treat people like shit when you do it. So wood tones, not as bad as food if we're making a hierarchy, put food over here, put wood tones here, and then move up from there. But it's still the same, like it still makes me uncomfortable. It's still a kind of thing like, what else you got? Because the other part of this is, do you have to physically objectify or describe that person right now? Are there other ways to do it? Do I really need to know their eyes are that shade? There, on that page, at that line, at that time. Is that important? Or is it more important that the look they're giving me is conveyed? That might be a little too subtle. I might be watering down the point. But it does speak to the idea of how you convey information to people, what you're casual with, what you're not casual with. Wasn't there a blog post that went around a while back that had great examples? Yes, there are frequently threads done by historians, actually, who want to point out that in like medieval, there's frequently a thread on Twitter that circles around about how there weren't, in medieval art and in medieval times, there were more than just white folks. And they highlighted this in the art, and they highlighted this in the descriptions and the language and the created work of the time. It frequently comes around, and it is not always brought up in that sort of hypercritical, oh my God, I can't say anything anymore ways. It's more a matter of, there's a whole wide-ass language to use to describe somebody. Why do we have to go to colors? Why do we have to go to foods? How else can we connect the reader to this person in a way that gives everybody a chance to understand, while also simultaneously, as a writer, pushing you to do better? Because, and I'm not saying this is anybody in the chat, but there is frequently a thing. I don't know what to call it. An odd coincidence. How about that? An odd coincidence where it really seems like people are looking for the fastest way to say a thing and they're willing to be indecorous in order to do it. I just want to say whatever, shit, get it out. Just say the thing and move on. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. It should be a big deal. You have the entirety of art at your disposal, the entirety of language at your disposal. Use it. Her eyes twinkled like the stars. Here you go. There you go. Awesome. Fantastic. Her eyes twinkled like the stars. That way, the breadth and a quantity of twinkling, the degree of twinkling, anybody's understanding of stars and twinkling, it's all variable different because I see stars twinkling one way, you might see it another, but you're still trying to get the idea across. That's a fantastic example. That works. Her eyes twinkled like the stars. Awesome. That's really very nice. Good job. Thumbs up. Have air horns incoming. Good job. That's a great one. I do love a good contentious question. Oh, I love a good contentious question. I'm sure I'm going to get shit for that question now that I think about it. Metaphors are the way to go. Totally. Hey, they're not necessarily bad all the time. I mean, obviously you want to do more than just metaphors 100%. But yeah, if metaphors work, we're going to Metaphor Town. Get in the car. Question 11. Can you talk about what a fantasy novel definitely needs in it for it to count as fantasy? Oh, we're going to have to go full screen for this. Okay. Nope, full screen. Where's my full screen key? Was it? Yep, that one. Okay. As long as it's not a food or drink metaphor, go to metaphors. You're fine. All right. We're going to talk about fantasy novels now. This is going to be a couple minutes. Okay? By design. Hang on a minute. Okay, sorry. By design, a fantasy novel must do the following things. And it doesn't matter if it's urban fantasy or high fantasy or low fantasy, okay? That's the umbrella we're under right now. So here are the things a fantasy novel must do. Ready? We're going to make a list. And again, this isn't in order, but these are the things that have to happen. They're in the order I'm saying them. They can happen in your story in any order. Ready? Number 1, you have to have a main character. Number 2, have to have a plot. Number 3, have to have a climax for that plot. Number 4, have to have a resolution to the plot via the climax. Okay? Those 4, critical. Where the fantasy comes in depends on the flavor of fantasy you're making. I'm sitting up because I want you to understand this. When we talk about fantasy, we are creating a reality that is separate and distinct from the reader's understanding of their reality. Now, if we go like medieval fantasy, then we're going to have to conjure an alternate version of the medieval period. Now, when I say an alternate version, I'm not talking about how like it has to be X number of degrees like the Kevin Bacon game away from reality. It's just not going to be exactly the same as it happened here for the reader's existence. We're making it up. We can carbon copy it exactly, but the minute we start fabricating new pieces, we have created an alternate reality. This, first of all, is straight up sorcery. It's absolutely hermetic magic. Just understand that. Because when it comes to fantasy, all we have to do is create a story that in one or more ways is different and distinct from the reality the reader is used to and the rules of the reality that the reader is used to. We can add wizards. We can add non-human races. We can add aliens. We can add, we can add literal magic if we want to. All of those things qualify as fantasy. When we subdivide down into like urban fantasy, then we want to make sure we feature the city, a singular city, as sort of a centerpiece for our locations. And the majority of the story occurs in and around a set of locations within the confines of one city. Urban fantasy. High fantasy has to do with creating a completely distinct Earth, air quotes, all the way around in order to shape the story. Low fantasy is a level of technology and power in that same alternate Earth. Speculative fantasy is fantasy that feels mostly like our Earth, but makes significant deviations that occur in and around the story. Example. It's our Earth, but there's time travel. The time travel is the speculative element. The reason why fantasy is such a broad umbrella, and the reason why science fiction fantasy gets kind of grouped together, is because arguably science fiction is a kind of fantasy because it contains fantastic elements. Don't just hear or read fantasy and think elves, dwarves, chainmail, wizards, and swords. That's one flavor of fantasy. That's over there. But beyond that, you just need to make sure that your fantastic elements engage the story and develop the story. You need to be able to have what are called consequential elements. They matter. That's why you're talking about them. You're not just throwing it out there like, yeah, there's dragons. And then we go back and talk about like the spelling bee for the school. If you're bringing it up, do something with it. Now, here's a question. Is speculative fiction the term for large umbrella? Yes. It's the big overall umbrella. If you do all of them, is it high urban fantasy? Is that a thing? Yeah, it's a thing, but we don't call it that. But yeah, you can have high urban fantasy. Usually, you just chop off the high and you go with urban fantasy. It's a publishing thing specifically. You try to just stick it to. You can combine all those elements. It's totally fine. But when it comes time to market it or pitch it or query it, you just grab one of those terms. Which term? Well, that's up to you. But you grab one. Because if you start daisy chaining them all together, even if you're doing it correctly, it gets messy because the reader wants like a clear picture. Tell me it's urban fantasy. I know more or less what to expect. It's one of the reasons why when you have multiple genres in a story, you can run into a situation where the two ideas are competing, like a romantic thriller versus a thrilling romance. How much of one versus how much of the other? Folk horror, but not horror, is just folk. A non-city urban fantasy is the question. Yes, non-city urban fantasy. I swear I'll say that sounds correctly. Non-city urban fantasy is suburban and exurban. Those two formations of urban fantasy, rather than taking the city as the location for several scenes, it talks about the city as a distant thing, a removed thing. We left the city, or the city is where we are eventually going, or the city left an impression on us. That's why we left. So the city plays a role, but it is a different role than in straight up urban fantasy, where the city is like one of the, there's 16 spots in the city where we have the scene set. But you can totally take the city out of urban fantasy and it's still urban fantasy. It's just not traditional urban fantasy in its presentation. Yeah, I'm going to non-city urban fantasy because in my head I want to do non-urban city fantasy, which is a thing, but it's not like a genre label. It's just an identifier. I'll sit down and finish my tea and stumble over that a few more times. Excellent questions, though. Any others in and around the fantastic vein? Because beyond that, it's not like a fantasy has to have certain things. Oh, you're writing high fantasy, so you have to have a ranger with a troubled backstory. No. Oh, it's an urban fantasy, so you better have a detective wizard. No. Oh, it's It's a cyberpunk fantasy, so you better have somebody wearing leather in the rain. No. I mean, you can. That's fine. You're totally okay. But it's not because of the presence of that thing that you've, ticked the accomplishment box when it comes to crafting the story. Just because things are common in it does not mean you have to adopt that convention or repeat that habit. When did the split between sci-fi and fantasy happen, and was it in the pulp era? It was kind of in the pulp. So there's two schools of thought. One, it's in the pulp era, just because of the proliferation of the number of magazines and the distinction when publishers realized that, hey, we can make more money if we stick all our sci-fi in one thing and all our pulp in the other. That's one school of thought. Other school of thought says that the gap was somewhere around the advent of radio, because as radio needed more things to be distinct, they started specializing, where you'd have sci-fi pulp, Flash Gordon, other serials, Republic serials like that, where you've got a story that's engaging, but it's not really clear what genre it is. It kind of straddles or sits in the intersection of multiple Venn diagrams. That split was then perpetuated by media, who was looking to make it more distinct so they could have more things like it. Because it's easier to say, oh, this is science fiction like Flash Gordon, than it is to go, this is science fiction pulp, or this is more... The more specific I can be in, I'll say it this way, the more specific I can be in drawing those distinctions, the easier it is for me to produce more work like it. I tend to think it's because of the publication of pulp. The idea that we can have thrilling detective magazine alongside Black Mask, alongside sci-fi tales, and they're all the same publisher, and they're all edited by the same people, and they're all more or less the same writers. But because we're labeling them differently, it feels like it's a totally different thing. In the same way that, like, Lego blocks suddenly get segregated by color, even though they're all, like, the same size. But for some reason, the Lego Avengers blocks, and I swear to you, I'm speaking not from expertise of standing on Legos several times in my life, but the Lego Avengers blocks are segregated and separated differently than the way Star Wars Legos blocks are, even though they're the same goddamn blocks. And you've got horror and weird tales, and they're the same thing, but they're not the same thing, even though they're written by the same 5 people, because white dudes. The separation, I think, was more determined by publication than it was by story stuff. Because if you left these guys alone to, abuse women, drink heavily, and snort cocaine, they'd probably just keep writing the same kind of stories. That's my opinion. Now, there was a question up here. Can you do Christian fantasy without Jesus? Yes, because there's more to Christianity than Jesus. I mean, Jesus is a big part, but you could do the apostles. You could do the prodigal son. You could do the secondary characters. You could do the creation myth. You could do the flood. You could do the Romans. You could do, loads of different things. We need a shirt that says, because white male authors. All right, hang on. Check. So yes, you can do like Narnia without Aslan. Yeah, totally. The danger there. So Aslan is a real specific thing, because I buy that. Yeah, I think lots of people would buy that shirt. Maybe I can use it to pay my phone bill. Aslan in Narnia is so specifically a Jesus representation that if you took Aslan out, the rest of the story sort of collapses. But if you want to take the idea of, hey, here's a fantasy kingdom with all these different species and everything interacting, but there's like a central philosophy that is itself inherently Christian to some degree, you could super do that. One might say a lot of Western lit could be considered Christian fantasy without Jesus. Yes, one might say that. Yes, fancy that. I wonder how that happened. White people. Lord of the Rings is Christian fantasy because it's a thing. You can die on that hill. It's fine. I would go with you. It's certainly endemic of that frame of thought. So yeah, I'd say that. Good call. Other questions? Else we shall march on to our last for the evening. Absolutely. It's my pleasure to explain these things. You know I love talking. All right. Where's my... Oh, there we go. 12. Oh, boy. Big exhale on this one. How do I get over being afraid to talk about my work? Have a delightful night. Thank you for coming. It really meant a great deal to me. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Have a good night. Question 12. How do I get over being afraid to talk about my work? Chances are... Oh, hang on. Harp. Chances are the thing you're afraid of is the response of the other person. So if you don't talk about your work, you're not going to get that bad response you're afraid of getting. You don't know if you're going to get the bad response. You're assuming for whatever baggage or reasons you've brought up to that moment, you're assuming it's likely to happen, but you've got no evidence for that. If you do have evidence for it, why on earth would you share your work with that person in the first place? But no one's going to know you're doing a thing without you saying you've done it. No one's going to know what you're into, what you like doing, how hard you're working at it. No one's going to be able to give you the credit you want. No one's going to be able to give you the praise you want without at least giving them the opportunity to do so. But that fear of potential rejection gets in the way. It's a bouncer at the nightclub. It's just a blockade at the door. It's always there so long as we always think about our work in terms of how someone else is going to take it. Meaning we are thinking more about the other person than we are ourselves. And I'm not talking about this in terms of like, oh, I'm being selfish and talking about myself, because that's some horse shit. You are allowed to talk about the things you like to the degree you like to talk about them. It's not arrogant to say, hey, I'm really proud of this thing I just did. That's just giving yourself some credit. You should be doing that. You've worked hard on your work, or you are in the middle of working hard on your work, or you are confident you will work hard on your work. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It doesn't enter you into a Faustian deal where now this other person has to hold you to that promise. Because you're just telling them like, hey man, I worked really hard on this chapter. Oh, I'm writing a book. It's been a lot of fun, but it's also been really interesting and really tough. And maybe they'll pick the ball up and run with that conversation. Maybe they won't. But you can get over the fear. You can get around the fear by thinking about what it is you like. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you writing? Is it just to make money? Is it to just be a published author? Is it just to see your name on the spine of a book? And that's fine if it is. All of those reasons are fine. I might disagree with some more than others, but it's not about me agreeing or disagreeing. It's just, well, why are you doing the thing you're doing? And can you, rather than just repeat the same statement over and over in a canned way, I just want to be a published author. I just want to be a published author. I just want to be a published author. Rather than stick to the one line and just repeat it to death. Can you detail it? Can you say more about it? Why do you want to be a published author? Well, because when I was, 15, I had, shingles, and I spent an entire summer like trying not to itch, and I just read and occupied my time for a month and a half, and like it left such a huge impression on me. Or when I was a little kid, my grandparents sat and read to me, and I just really liked that feeling. Whatever the case might be. Find out why you love doing the work that you're doing, why you got started, why you keep going, why you have the goal that you have. And then you're going to take that goal and take that idea and leverage it against the idea of this fear. Well, I really love the feeling of crafting my own story and having that authority and having that confidence and being able to, produce hermetic magic and produce a thing out of nothing, literally shape the forces of existence. Because, as Alan Moore says, like, stories and art and books change the world. And the likelihood of your doing something that changes the world, even if it's just for one person, is contingent on you doing the work in the first place. If you want to change somebody's world the way your world was changed, you have to do this. You're going to take that idea, that notion, this power you have that you maybe never recognized as actual power because you've downplayed the importance of it. But you're going to take this power and kind of line it up with this idea of like, well, yeah, but if is this idea that I could, I could move somebody the way I was moved, is that more or less important, more or less critical, more or less valid or worth it than the chance that somebody could be like, oh, it sucks, dude, and they blow me off? The response you're afraid of is so temporary in the grand scheme of things. How many seconds does it take for somebody to brush you off or say nothing or make fun of you and then drop it and walk away? Or you walk away and disengage if they're still going to be a pest about it. Seconds, maybe a minute, versus the amount of positive stuff you feel when it comes time to sit and think about your work and talk about your work with yourself or to your other writerly comrades. You've got to weigh that good against the bad and then choose which one's going to win right now. Part of that's going to come down to reading the room, because maybe you're talking to somebody who you get a real sense of like, if I mention my book there, it's not going to go well. So don't talk about it. But overall, on the whole, counting all the people you're counting, is it more important that you own your sorcery, you own your ability, or is it more important that you just avoid a possible negative response that isn't guaranteed? In every interaction, there's that 50-50, right? It could go well, it could go badly. Every time, every iteration, flip of the coin. Is that the chance of 50% bad? Is that more important than I'm really proud of this thing I'm doing? By the way, if it is, you probably want to examine that. You probably want to think about why it is that you're saying that the response of somebody else is more important than your own sense of satisfaction and pride. You might want to bring that up with a professional or a loved one or both, because what you're saying in that case, when you hide your accomplishment and hide your effort, is that you're saying that your opinions and your feelings are less important than someone else's, which is categorically horseshit. You're allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to be proud of your work. You're allowed to enjoy your work. You should do all those things. You should feel all those things. You should go out of your way to feel those things. And you should be unapologetic and unabashed in mentioning, hey, I'm really goddamn proud of this. Even if I don't get the response from the person I want, it doesn't stop me being proud of it. It just means I didn't get the response I wanted. I can be bummed about it. I can be pissed about it. But that is independent of, I'm really proud of the work I did. It's a hard thing. It's a scary thing. But it's a good thing. And then when you make that decision and you get there and you sort all that stuff out, you practice it. You repeat it. And every time that voice in your head goes, you're being arrogant, or you're saying too much, or this, that, or the other. Okay. You're not. You have no reason to think that. You're just talking about what you're excited about, talking about what you're proud of. If you had a really good burger, I would expect you to go, oh man, John, that burger, you gotta go. You gotta check that shit out. I would expect you to tell me. Or a taco, or burritos, or whatever else. That's not anything. That's not bad. We wouldn't get on each other's case for that. So why would we do it for our art? That burger was somebody else's art. So why is your art less important? Why are your feelings less valid? Chew on that. And over time, with practice, with repetition, you will reach a point where you are less afraid to talk about your work. It's not easy, but it is so, so worth it. So that way, when someone goes, hey, what are you up to? You can just let them know. You're worth it. Practice. Choose. All right. I think if there aren't any other questions, I think that's it. Let me jump out here. Are there any other questions? Else we will go to the outro. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shall we outro? Let's outro. I just want to thank everybody for being here. This was tremendous. This was the hot fudge sundae at the end of a really good day. This was the excellent taco at the end of an amazing experience. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for letting me talk about art and talk about making things and believing in yourself and how to do tropes and how to sort things out and how to bust up some metaphors. Thank you so much for everything. I apologize for that other question. I didn't get a graphic, but I hope I was still able to tell you what's up with how things work. Thanks. Meant the world to me. I do want to talk about what's coming next because it's important. The next time I'm here, the next time we talk will be Monday, April the 18th. That's this coming Monday. Our topic hasn't been announced yet. You're the first to hear this. I don't have a graphic yet, but you're the first to hear it. We're going to talk about perfect characters and why characters shouldn't be perfect and what to do about your perfect character and how to make them better than that in a thing we're going to call Your Characters Don't Have to Be Perfect. It's going to be part of the How Do I Write This series. So look for that on Monday, April the 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And the next time I'm back here for a writer's chat will be on Wednesday, the 20th of April, 4/20. Oh, it's the magic number, you guys. So until then, maybe I'll do a different graphic for that day. Until then, until the next time we talk, all power to all people. Do your best to take care of yourself and take care of others. Celebrate your art, celebrate yourselves, say good things, support one another. If you liked what you heard, if you enjoyed this, don't forget you can like, subscribe, and click the bell over on YouTube. You can feel free to follow over here on Twitch. If you're an Amazon Prime member, by the way, you get one free Prime sub. I'd be more than happy to take it for you. And if you want more content, more stuff like this, and you want to support this, the best thing you can do is jump over to the Patreon, patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouCreate. And if you want more individual help, more answers, more personal tailoring, editing, and everything else, go check out writernextdoor.com. I will see you guys very, very soon. See ya!